So in fact, 7% of the entire homeless population of the country is in LA. That's how large the numbers are. As far as trying to stop the growth of other homeless that are coming from different areas, if we're specifically talking about the river trail, that is what the county is doing by doing the security and closing the gates and putting the locks on them so that it won't be accessible for homeless to set up encampments. And that's a process that they're working, starting from the south and systematically moving to the north, which will eventually get to our area of the riverbed. I wanted Brad to talk about, because he has more information on how far the homeless travel, and they also, as part of their census, they identified what cities are homeless in the river trail, where they're from. So I don't know if you those.
Yeah, I actually don't have those statistics on hand, but I can tell you where they're at. You can go to citynet.org, go on the Flood Control Channel logo, and the entire one-page report that breaks down the specifics is on there. So you're welcome to see it. Again, that was a self-reported survey, so one of the questions we asked in the census, because it's actually interested to us, the question is self-reported, meaning they tell us, we ask questions with law enforcement, without law enforcement. We're basically saying, look, we can help you work through the system. We want to be your advocates. If you would let us, and we're not going to force you, but if you would let us, we will work it. What we found in that sort of last permanent residence, that was the question we asked. Or where did you sleep last night? Another question that we asked. All those numbers are on there. The vast majority, the significant majority of those folks are local. So there are definitely outliers. There are people that showed up and they said, I was in Boston a month ago or wherever. We have that all broken down. We actually, that's a real long list because we tell you exactly what they told us. Most of the people were from Anaheim, Orange, Santa Ana. So they are, from what we hear by that, these are our neighbors who have just sort of been pushed, and this is sort of where they've ended up. So it's not that they're coming from all over. And I think those stats would hold up true if you looked at them across the, people are not just relocating all over the place. They sort of stay where they're familiar, where they know how to access resource, where their community is. For better or worse, the community that a lot of these folks lean on is the communities that they've built. So in terms of the answers of where they're coming from, most of them are from right around here. So they're our neighbors in that sense. And if you want to get that information, it's all on that piece of paper.
And how are you validating that information? How are you validating that information if you're saying if they come from Las Vegas and they're saying they're from Orange County, from Anaheim?
When we did the census, we just took their word for it.
That's not a valid, for me that is not something valid, because I have a friend that helps a lot of homeless, and they're coming from Las Vegas, they're coming from different places to the city of Anaheim, because unfortunately the mayor happens to have that beautiful slogan, the city of kindness, and we're tired as residents, we're tired of investing so much money in our homes, and we want safety, and we really want our neighborhood back, because I don't think 1,000 people in the riverbed come from Orange.
What kind of kindness has the homeless gotten?
I'm sorry?
What kind of kindness has the homeless gotten?
Don't interrupt. Let's not get into debate here. We're asking questions.
You know what? And I'm not sure if you're from that area, Anaheim, District 5 area. But we here, we're very concerned residents, and we just want safety for our neighborhoods, for our children, for everybody.
So that was the answer to the census. Once we start working with people, which we're approaching about 200 people that we're working with on active case management, that's a different kind of conversation. When we're out there just trying to get a go to read, part of the reason we did the census, we want to say who's out here. Veterans, for example. How many veterans are out here? Do you remember that specific number? I think it's around 12. Verify it on that document. So do we need to bring down every veterans organization for the entire county to help those 12? We do it. They will be part of this triage day to help those, because those, but it sort of helps us sort of paint the picture. Once we get into case management, we really sort of work through and say, look, we're here to help you, and then we actually sort of get into, we don't do criminal background checks, but we will do case management based on learning where they're at. We know what programs they've been part of before, what didn't work, why didn't that work. The 16 recidivisms, we still count that as success. In the sense that those are people that are willing to start moving, and if you go someplace and it doesn't work, no problem. We'll try 2 more options and keep on going. So that's sort of how we would approach that. All that data is online if you want to find it.
We've been hearing that, at least Sean's saying that the other counties, other areas have been not affected or highly affected or any in terms of homeless, and they seem to be coming here. Well, if counties and San Bernardino, Riverside, and San Diego, whatever, are having success or not success, what is being done to look at their operations to see whether if they are successful in dealing with homeless, that we could also think about, are they dumping off their people here? And is that how they call it success? And since it is a statewide problem, and I've talked to Chris about it before, and also how much funds are we getting from the state as well as from the federal to deal with this? And like I said, is there any cross-county cooperation or feedback about the homeless and what they're doing?
I'll give an effort on that, but we, as far as the dropping off, we have had a few isolated incidents of that when we opened our shelter and when Santa Ana opened the shelter downtown there. A lot of times it's just a lack of understanding by other agencies. They hear the word, oh, there's a homeless shelter. That's where I need to take this homeless person who's asking for help. And so they mistakenly bring the person here. Those are very isolated incidents, and we talk among ourselves, among the departments, to say, please don't do that. On the sharing of ideas, I can tell you again, we've sent our staff outside of the county, outside of the state, to look at models that may or may not work. And we brought back some ideas. Some we've learned that's not the way to do it. We have taken some ideas though. So, Mike, do you have anything else on that?
Yeah, we went up to Santa Maria, looked at their model, pretty good model up there, and we went down to San Diego and check out their models there. And we didn't want to do what San Diego was doing because they had that big tent city, and they were just sleeping there and being fed there, and it caused multiple other issues in their downtown area there. As far as the large influx of homeless coming out over to Anaheim from other jurisdictions, there's not a lot of them that are coming from outside the city. I'm on the streets every day with them. Every now and then I encounter a homeless person that's from outside the area. That happens. But in general, overall, we're not getting a huge influx coming out. Brad's correct to say that from my experience on the streets with my guys, most of the people they encounter are local homeless folks here. So.
And I can speak for, I interact with police chiefs across the county, and almost every one of them says the homelessness is either the top or the second most important issue they're facing. So I don't want you to think that they're all coming here. This problem has impacted the county. No one is immune.
Larry?
One quick word about comparing what works or what doesn't work. Guys, we know what works. Housing. We know what works. We don't need a new shiny toy. We don't need something there's nothing new under the sun. We could put a fancy name on it. We could call it outreach and case management, whatever. We know what works. It's the same thing that works all across the country, and it's housing. If we are not deeply investing in housing, and that's our focus, this is just a waste of everybody's time. We know what works, we just simply have to do it.
We have a following question here.
I understand about the housing because I am retired, my girlfriend will be retired soon. And we are looking at the fact that living in Anaheim, in California, and anything like that, we may not be able to survive here. So we are already taken into our own personal responsibility of thinking that we may have to move out of the state. Because we, in our own housing, may not be able to survive here past several years into our retirement. We're looking at Arizona, Utah, Oregon, places like that to retire. So we are taking on our own personal responsibility to do that. And so I understand the housing. It is being very high. Orange County, from what I last heard, is the highest in the state of California in terms of housing. We are on an average around 700,000, what I understand, for housing. We have, our price has gone up less, and other places have gone up. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, I understand the housing, but then because it's impacting my own personal life, I know I have to move out. I may have to move out. So why do I have to feel entitled to have to live here? And why is everybody else feeling this, that they have to live in the same way that they're born? My parents moved out of state because, into the state because they could not find housing and jobs where they lived, so they came to California back in the 50s. And then they moved out to Riverside County because they couldn't afford it. What I'm saying is, it's like, you said you talk about housing, yes, I understand that. I'm impacted by that too. But I'm already taking it into my own personal responsibility that I may have to move out, just like my parents did.
So I'm an avid bike rider, so you can understand my frustration. Last time I took the river trail this summer, people urinating, people defecating all over the trail, loose pit holes. I don't know why animal control hasn't went down there and cleaned up the animal problem down there. So my real question is, so housing works like you said, but what are these people required to do to contribute? What work programs? How come they're not picking these people up in buses and requiring them to pick up the trash on the freeways? Or do something to get back?
We did just start a program that's called Better Way Anaheim, and it's through a nonprofit where they have a van and they are going to drive around, and the homeless that are willing to, they're able to do manual tasks for cleaning up the community, and in return they'll get a stipend, like a gift card at the end of the day. So we have started a small homegrown program, and the County of Orange is looking into a model which is the chrysalis model, where it puts the individuals to work, it teaches them skill sets, and then it transitions them into a temporary job and then hopefully a permanent job. So there are programs out there like that.
What about the animal control?
I can't speak on behalf of the animal controls with regard to...
You don't want to take the chasing.
No, you don't.
I can tell you that one of the arrests that Sergeant Lozo talked about had to do with an animal problem. So they're down there when they're doing the enforcement. Animal control is with them.
And part of the injunction is that if there's an animal in the injunction area, it needs to be on a leash. So there is that requirement.
Where did the arresters go after they went to jail? So does Santa Ana get them now?
They don't all go to jail. Some of them get tickets and they're released in the field. If they do get transported, they will end up in county jail. That's true. That's correct.
Chris, can we have use the recorded mic perhaps for your answers? Because some of our residents, some of my neighbors are able to. So,
Hi, my name is Grant Henniger. I'm a candidate for City Council from District 6. I like details and I like solutions, so I have kind of a detailed-oriented question, kind of trying to get towards solutions. It sounds like what CityNet has been doing on behalf of Anaheim in trying to get services for our homeless population has been a lot more successful than what the county has done so far, just in the percentages of the contacts that are willing to get services. So my first question is kind of why are we being more successful than what the county has been doing, and can we help them somehow be more successful in the contacts that they're having? And then for the population that isn't willing to have services, we've talked about enforcement, but what does that really mean? What are we going to do other than just disperse them from where they are now to somewhere else? It seems like we've dispersed them out of our parks, and then they congregate in the river trail. So just dispersing them doesn't seem to be a good solution. So what is the solution other than that?
I'll take the first part of that question.
Use the mic, please, Christine.
I'll do the first part of that question, and you were comparing CityNet success working for the county versus working for Anaheim. We first contracted with CityNet back in January 2014, so they have been working for almost 4 years in our city, and they have to date cumulatively 837 street exits that they've done for the city of Anaheim. And they have the similar return rate as well. The county just barely contracted with CityNet 5 months ago. Do I have the dates right? July 1st. So their contract was for 6 months, which it's going to expire in December, but the county intends to extend it because of the success that they're now seeing in doing exits from the river trail. In regards to what law enforcement looks like, I'm going to turn it over to the guy in the uniform.
So enforcement, yes, you're right. We do enforcement and outreach. Those are the two-pronged approach. And number one, it's education. Let them know what the violations are, what is permissible, what is not. If it's a clear law violation, those are in some ways easier. But as you've heard tonight, because of Prop 47 and 57, often it is a citation. We don't have the ability to remove them from the area. However, however, I can tell you that
in our parks, we have successfully used our municipal code to enforce those crimes which directly impact public safety for the neighborhoods directly surrounding the parks. You can't sleep in a park overnight. We enforce that. We enforce it, and if they don't comply, they will go to jail, and their belongings will be confiscated. So it's those crimes that directly impact you, where you live and where your children play, or where we focus our efforts. Now, is it a bit of a game of whack-a-mole, where you are pushing them to a different area? Yes, to be quite frank, that is occurring. There's no question about that. The question is, you address those crimes which are the most impactful to quality of life and livability in neighborhoods. That's the best way I can answer that question. There's no way we can enforce our way out of this. It does come back, I think, to what Larry says on some degree. There has to be a number of housing units developed. That plus the shelter opportunities that are going to be coming online. But once there is an alternative to living in that park or living next to a residence, which is against the law, those will be enforced.
Hello, my name is R.Joshua. I'm an activist for the homeless, and I'm an ex-math instructor and actually lived with the homeless for probably over 10 years as part of my ministry work. And I experienced, I actually experienced firsthand the bigotry from police officers in Anaheim. For instance, this officer, I don't know why you're laughing, you didn't even finish what I'm saying, but this officer back here, Officer Hampton, for instance, I was just sitting on a park bench with my guitar and a bag, and he says, hey, you're storing your property in public, and started harassing me about it. I got a video to prove it. And the thing is, all you residents that go to parks and have property with you, right, you're actually violating the storage of property law, okay, if you actually read that law. So you're a hypocrite. If you're like, well, we want to, nail these homeless people for having property in the park, well then you got to nail yourself too. So don't be a hypocrite, okay? And as far as camping, okay, there's people got camping tickets about 9 a.m. or 9:30 or so yesterday, and the park was open, and they're there with their stuff, and they're getting tickets for camping and storing property, okay? More hypocrisy. You guys have your big festivals or parties or whatever in the park. You're storing.
Is this a question? Or are you making a statement?
I'm going to finish. I'm going to ask my question.
I want to hear, they want to hear a question.
Let me finish. Let me finish. I'm not calling you a name. I'm just saying. Okay. I didn't. Okay. Maybe you are. Maybe you are. I'm just saying. This is what I'm saying. Can I finish? Let me finish. Can I finish? Can I please finish? Okay. This is the thing. Hey, I have the right to ask the question. Okay. So this is the question. Let me ask the question. You guys are talking so much, I can't ask anything. You're still talking. Can I please? Please.
No, you're talking.
Okay. So here's the thing. how are you going to deal with the selective enforcement issue and the hypocrisy? I mean, that's the thing. I don't have a problem with people, the officers dealing with crime. That's different than dealing with people's property that they have a right to have as an American citizen. Poor Americans have rights just like everyone else. So that's the thing.
What was your question about what are you going to do about hypocrisy? Yeah. Okay, then let's.
I can answer it. I'll start, first off, we talked about allegations of misconduct against my officers, our officers. Every one of our police contacts is recorded on body-worn camera, every one of them. You have ample opportunity to submit personnel complaints. You know how to do it, you've submitted them before. So I encourage you to do the same. If you have a specific incident, we'll pull the video and we'll investigate your complaint. As far as selective enforcement, we know the difference between someone who is camping and storing their worldly belongings in a park versus someone who's at the park having a family picnic. There is a difference. Now, hang on. I can also tell you the reality of every day, I get the phone calls, our officers respond to those calls where there are hypodermic syringes in the parks, in the bathrooms in the parks, and these are parks that are adjacent to schools. So this is a public safety issue, and this is why we enforce our camping and our storage of property requirements. You asked a question, I'm giving you an answer. So you asked two questions. If I'm getting harassed by a police officer, what do I do? And then if there's selective enforcement, what do I do? You have the ample right to complain on either. All of our contacts are recorded. We write police reports. We document when we take people's property from the parks, where it is, on what date, and how they can get that property back.
You're basically saying that the rich people can have property and the poor people can't. That's what I heard.
My question is for Brad from CityNet. I've heard for those that receive services who go through the program, in the end game, they are placed in housing. Just out of curiosity, how is that housing sustained? Because I know before I got married, I had trouble sustaining. When I was a single mother, I had trouble affording rent. How is the rent paid?
We're paying for it.
Yeah, there's lots of answers to that question. There's as many answers to that question as there are situations. Sometimes it's a family that kind of, they rebuild that bridge and the family takes them back in. We had one of those over the weekend from the Flood Control Channel. Sometimes it's getting housing that is scaled on their wages, and so they end up paying up to 30% of their income for housing. All of those are options we would love to take advantage of and make sure that people can access the housing to the degree that they're able to do it and get back on their feet. What we also see is that when you get into a shelter, whether that's one of the ones Mercy House runs or one of the others, is once you begin to sort of get your daily functions back together, you start taking, it's amazing what happens when you start taking a shower every day. And so any chance that we can get them into some sort of housing, and there is systems, we can get in a lot of the weeds of that. Now, I'm going to come back to your question too. What's working? So CityNet is, I think it's the core. So I'm going to hold that in there. There we go. So we're one of the, in the continuum of care, there's lots of pieces that come together. So what works? We happen to be on sort of on the front end of a lot of that. And so what I train our staff to say is that it may take 6 to 7 to 8 interactions to work with an individual before they'll actually sort of engage. Whether we're doing enforcement with law enforcement, we're doing outreach and engagement, and enforcement with law enforcement. We love going out with law enforcement because we want to make sure that they're having tangible resources that we can say, hey, we're here to help. I know they've talked to you about it. We're here to talk to you about it again. So it's going to take it takes a minute, 7 to 8 times. So part of the reason why it's successful, it comes down to sort of bandwidth. You know, in the Flood Control Channel, right up by here, we're there 7 days a week, all day long. Pretty much if the sun is out, we're out there. And so there's opportunity to have regular conversations with people and say, hey, are you interested today? No, thank you. Okay, see you tomorrow. And that sort of thing essentially is sort of the secret sauce. It really is. So while other agencies that are off doing other things don't have that sort of commitment, in many cases CityNet, even though we do other things, we are out there sort of what we call building trust. Many of those people have, you know, we moved a guy out of the Flood Control Channel that had lived there for 17 years. 17 years. And so truthfully, the list of organizations and people that would be part of that guy's success story, we just happened to be there on the day he said, I'm done today. But there's lots of different organizations. We count on that. So it's when all the agencies work together and we sort of work together, trust each other, which is happening to a large extent. And then commitment and constant presence is really what sort of what moves the needle on a regular basis.
Hey, let's see some more hands here.
Maybe I can just stand up. For the gentleman on the end, could you give us a daily activity, a real quick daily activity of what happens in, what would happen in the shelters that the people complain about? And, I mean, I understand the privacy issue and some of those things, but what do they do as an activity during the day where you're, I mean, obviously you can't work with them 24/7. You know, they have to have some kind of, you know, some kind of activity, or where do they go, or what do they do during that?
Are they allowed to be there all day?
Daylight time, or are they allowed to be there all day, or how does that work?
Can you describe the armory and that kind of shelter, and when it's open, when it's closed, what people do there?
I think those are two allied questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Do your best, Larry.
Is this on? Can you hear me back there?
Wiggle the cord.
I'll just talk. I'll just do the best I can. So I'm going to try and answer a question that I think that I heard, because there's a lot there. Everybody's story is different. There are people who are there all day. What we do is we make sure when somebody comes in that we have a housing plan for them, that we have an assessment on them, and that will then determine what their course of action is. That will take place within 7 to 10 days. So within 7 to 10 days, everybody at Bridges, the Anaheim shelter, has a housing plan. And for some people, that might be to secure their disability benefits. For others, it might be to go to a job. For others, it might be to go view an apartment. Everyone is different. Some people stay there during the day because of the services that we bring in, and others leave during the day because of appointments that they have. So, with all due respect, I can't give a simplistic answer to a very complex question.
Well, just kind of an overview of how the shelter does, you know, and do they have to leave during the day?
They do not, no. At the Bridges shelter, they do not have to leave during the day. There is a multi-service center there. Right now, I will not lie to you, it's a construction zone, so it's challenging. It's challenging for the people who are there, and it's challenging for those that work there. But during the day, some people will work on their housing plan. And like I said, that might mean filling out rental applications. That might mean going to a doctor's appointment. Everyone is going to be different. For those who, some stay, some leave, some stay. One of the things that is interesting, however, one of the great achievements, I think, if you were to go to the shelter, if you didn't know the address, you just knew the general area, you would be hard-pressed to find it. In fact, you won't find it. There are no lines. There's nobody outside. It is a bed reservation system where people are shuttled in and shuttled out. We take our relationships to the surrounding businesses and neighbors extremely seriously. So there is not that adverse impact that people might think. A gentleman earlier said that if you build it, they'll come. I saw the same movie. However, this isn't baseball. And that's not what happened here. In fact, everybody who's there is from this area. Police officers from outside of the northern part of the county can't drop people off, right? We don't allow it. So the people that are there are from this area. So everybody's story is entirely different. Now there's a question over here regarding the armory. The armory is a different thing altogether. And to put the two of them in the same breath is actually rather mistaken in terms of how communication goes, because they're going to be compared. The armory, you have to remember, was created about 30 years ago as a state of emergency in the state of California, and it was to create emergency shelter because of inclement weather. Because people were literally, and still do, die on the streets. So the point of the armory was to provide emergency shelter when weather was bad. It is more of a life-saving sort of thing. The people at the armory, it is very different. They do have to leave during the day. They come late in the afternoon, early in the evening, fed. We provide meals, we provide showers, we provide case management. Again, we also provide other service providers to come in and link them with a wide variety of services. We are doing assessments with them. We're inputting them into what's called the HMIS system. We're doing all this systems type of work. But you are right, they do have to leave during the day. And to be fair to some of the comments that were made earlier, it is a real negative. That's one of the real big negatives in going to the Armory. That's a real thing, and that's absolutely right. So the two are entirely different things. Sir, I think you had a question.
What is the cost of keeping somebody at the shelter and the cost, compared to the cost of moving them on to some kind of housing?
Yeah, I can't answer that.
And where do you get the money to pay for that? Is it all Anaheim? Is there federal money? Is there state money?
I cannot answer all of those questions off the top of my head, but let me answer the ones that I can as best that I can. I do not have committed to memory. We run 23 different programs at Mercy House, all throughout Southern California. And so it's difficult for me to have every budget in my head simultaneously, and I apologize for that. What I can tell you is, let's talk about funding sources and what the cost savings is. And if you want, I would be happy to give you my card at the end of this, and I can give you what the breakdown is. I'm happy to do that. I never dodge a question. I just don't want to make up numbers from the hip. What I can tell you is our source of funds and operations, the overwhelming majority of it is from the county. The overwhelming majority. Money was put in by the city of Anaheim for the acquisition, as was Fullerton and Winter Park, I think. Brea, thank you, Brea. So there were some other surrounding cities, Fullerton, that contributed for the acquisition for some of the capital costs. The overwhelming majority, however, does come from the County of Orange. We also leverage in-kind donations and raise private donations for it as well, both in terms of foundations and just donors to Mercy House. So that is where it comes. In terms of the operations of bridges, very little comes from the city of Anaheim. In fact, I'm not sure that any does off the top of my head. I'm sure I'm wrong, and I probably just alienated the assistant city manager in saying so. But the overwhelming majority is the county. The county is also, along with EFSP dollars, the primary funder for the Armory program. Again, it's really not funded by individual cities. Fullerton throws some in, Santa Ana throws some in. There's a small amount that's spread out with a handful of cities. What I can tell you though is this. I was part of the steering committee that created that United Way's UCI study, right, in terms of what is the cost of homelessness. And what I can tell you, Mercy House alone, and we're only one of several agencies, through our permanent supportive housing programs, getting people off the streets, we save the county, little c, not big C, about $27 million a year. It's saved. It is literally more expensive, right, to walk past a homeless person and do nothing than it is to create the housing to take care of them. And I would be happy to give you that breakdown, sir. I don't dodge it. It's late, I'm tired, and I just don't know it off the top of my head.
Could you give them cite the name of the work that if they want to Google the UCI study?
I'd appreciate it if you did it, because I could not possibly do it for you.
United Way has it on their website.
Yeah,
I reviewed all those numbers with them today.
That's a worthwhile read, just came out by UCI. It's sort of a comprehensive study on what we're currently investing and how it's not working and how we could potentially repurpose those funds. It's a great study that makes that point.
Jimmy, make it a question if you can.
Larry.
I have another question for you.